This week's episode of Invincible was a banger, and I want to talk about what it seems to be saying about the coming Viltrumite invasion, something that's sort of been left hanging since the Season 1 finale. Reminder that we have not read the comics here, we are cartoon purists, so people who already know what's going to happen from the comics might not get very much out of this. Spoilers ahead either way. This episode was divided into different parts, showcasing Mark Grayson's new life beginning at college, and some backstory on Alan the Alien, with them treating the first half of the episode like a dedicated episode of his own show. Alan the Alien was introduced at the end of Season 1 as someone offering Invincible entry into an alliance against the Viltrumites. Mark had believed his father to be a hero, of course, but had learned that he was actually sent to Earth to prepare for its conquering by the Viltrumites, other super beings like Omni-Man. The Viltrumites took a more direct approach to Alan's planet, it seems, not working their way into some sort of inner circle of elites like on Earth, but simply deciding to take down the Unopians with sheer force. Omni-Man seemed to only take his time on Earth because it had its own cast of really powerful heroes that Omni-Man knew he'd have to scope out, understand, and get close to, eventually leading to him being able to sabotage them in their own base. The Unopians didn't have any of these sort of superhero types, it seems, but that did not stop them from trying to make some. After their world had been devastated by the Viltrumites, the Unopians set up breeding labs on their various outposts to try and create a super Unopian. All of this brings the leader of the coalition of planets, Thetis, to invite the Unopians into their group, with the hope that they can eventually turn the battle against the Viltrumites, who seem all-powerful. Alan is the only one to get useful powers from this experiment, but even he ends up not being able to defeat a single Viltrumite, though he walked away alive. He was thus made an evaluator to be sent to different planets to try and find someone who is capable of defeating him, with that person perhaps being their best hope against a Viltrumite. This led to him meeting Mark Grayson, our Invincible, a son of a Viltrumite who has turned against his father and done battle with him. While not stronger than his father, Mark has the potential to at least be a match to him, and having him joining the coalition of planets would give them at least a slight advantage for the time being. Mark also represents a lot more than just another hero on the battlefield, however. According to Thetis, no Viltrumite has turned against another Viltrumite since an event called the Great Purge, which, as the name suggests, led to the death of at least one side of Viltrumites in this conflict. Since then, the Viltrumites have maintained not just their unity, but also their alien racial purity, according to the episode. It would seem to me that deep in the past of Invincible, there was a conflict that arose between at least two factions of Viltrumites that itself was rooted in there being Viltrumites of mixed alien races. The Viltrumites, according to Omni-Man, have reproductive cells that can take over the child they make almost entirely, leaving only aesthetic aspects of the alien partner's DNA in the child. This was proven with Mark, who has the potential to be almost as powerful as any Viltrumite, but also looks more like his mother. The Viltrumites are an alien species that has evolved over many eons to become what they are, and in the process, it would seem that their genes evolved to be more dominant. In our current time, Mark Grayson appears to be an exception to the ways of the Viltrumites, which is to breed within their species, but it's something that the Council does believe that it could exploit at some point. There could be other Viltrumite children hidden out there, as has been suggested, or it may be the beginning of cracks in the Viltrumite unity entirely, with them growing so big that the Council can begin using Mark Grayson as a way to turn more and more Viltrumites against each other. All is beginning to look up for Alan until he is asked to look out for a possible mole that seems to be feeding information to those Viltrumites they are trying so desperately to avoid. Just as Alan explains this to his lady friend, he's pulled into space by a group of Viltrumites who are demanding to know about Omni-Man. These Viltrumites refer to Omni-Man as the Viltrumite of Earth, not because he was born there, but because that is his territory, and they refer to Mark simply as the heir he sired, indicating a lot more respect for Mark than I was expecting, to be honest, using terms that are a bit clinical, but the use of heir as opposed to offspring is very peculiar and shows that he has some connection to his father that he can inherit. When confronted about this, Alan wonders how the Viltrumites have figured any of this out, much less how they know that he has any information, and that's when he realizes that the woman he was falling in love with was the double agent reporting to the Viltrumites, and instead of lashing out in anger, Alan just smiles and takes the punishment. This fight scene was so brutal that I legit thought Alan was going to die in it. I'd show it to you, but it's kind of gross. So if you haven't seen the episode specifically because you try to just enjoy recaps without the gore, just try to imagine how shocked I was when they managed to keep Alan barely alive with some alien technology after he got so destroyed. Then his bro Thetis still has the audacity to pull the plug and kill him anyways. Despite all this, Thetis claimed this is information that they can now use against the Viltrumites, and find more ways to crack in their order and hierarchy until the Viltrumites' biggest problem is themselves. Now from there we got some teen team drama, which is fun, but not really important to the talk of the Viltrumites today. Instead, that thread continued with Mark, who is suddenly visited by his childhood comic book hero, Seance Dog. Mark doesn't fall for this and refuses to believe any of the multiverse nonsense that he spouts. Seance Dog reveals himself to be an alien, claiming that his species of 42 billion people are going to be destroyed by a meteor shower unless Mark helps them. Interestingly, this bug claims that it took him his entire life to get to Mark, even though Mark hasn't been known as a superhero his entire life. When Mark gets on the ship, the alien also claims it will only take 6 Earth days to get back to his planet. Mark falls for this hook, line, and sinker because he's being encouraged by his friends, who are just as traumatized as he is about the number of deaths that come at the expense of Mark just not always being ready to help. Mark's girlfriend and Mark's boyfriend both don't want to deal with the pain of knowing that they caused any more deaths, and Mark is desperately trying to prove he can save lives instead of ruin them to prove he is not like his father. Because of this, however, he doesn't see the plot holes in all of this and ends up traveling to Thraxa without asking much questions for 6 days. When Mark arrives, he starts to notice the holes in the story, and instead of meeting some bug alien ruler of this paradise planet with no asteroids coming after it, he instead ends up meeting his father. Now, when Alan was getting ganged up by the Viltrumites, they asked if Omni-Man had abandoned his post. It would seem they rely largely on Omni-Man to lead his own mission and expect not to hear from him for long periods, and even may not be able to reasonably reach him without compromising their jobs. The fact that they go to Alan instead of flying to Earth to check in on him is very interesting, and with Omni-Man taking so long there because of the threat of heroes like the Guardians of the Globe, this means they do still fear running into super beings from other planets that may in fact be able to defeat them. Perhaps even long-lost Viltrumites who have lost their history and identity and have adapted heroic personas for their own people. When Mark makes it to this bug planet, he finds his father there, meaning he never returned to his post or even reported in. The fact that he's lured his son Mark out here means he definitely wants to try and make things work with Grayson before giving up on his mission entirely, I think. I wonder if Omni-Man has always had this as a sort of planet outpost that he'd visit during his time on Earth, his own little planet to conquer and cultivate, and this is simply where he went to hide after the battle with his son, or if he just found this place after leaving the Earth and was quickly able to become something of a leader there, before sending a bug to bring his son back to him. Trying to lure Mark in with Seance Dog was probably Omni-Man's idea, and I imagine he wants to try and convince Mark that it's not too late to work together, and that if they do this right, they can do minimal damage, and end up with a paradise of an Earth for the humans who would live under Viltrumite rule. Of course, this isn't how it's going to really go, however, and I'm desperate to watch next week's episode, and if you are too, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss my inevitable breakdown of it, as it's the last episode of this 4-week run, and we won't be getting any more until next year, and Invincible crossing paths with Omni-Man is definitely mid-season finale potential. See you guys then.